All right, welcome back once again to Research Fantasy presents the NBA Fantasy Baller DFS edition for this, the first day of March. I believe it's Ash Wednesday for those of you who believe in that. And it is 2017. I can't believe we're already in March of 2017. This year is flying by at a record pace. For those of you who don't know me, I go by the name Nickfromcwe on all major fantasy sites, and I'm still reeling from the fact that there is no college football DFS to play. What we will be doing here is bringing you our 3 favorite core plays to build around tonight in your DFS lineups, and also a YouTube exclusive 3 value plays to make sure that you have the wiggle room to get those big names in your lineups. Last night was certainly disappointing. If you were a Chicago Bulls fan, I say you were because I'm sure you're not admitting to that fact. At this point today, that team played as poorly as a team could possibly play. Jimmy Butler was our play of the night, and he wasn't just ours because he was widely owned throughout the industry. Watching the game for about the first quarter and a half, you can just tell he was not playing with any kind of energy at all. He just didn't seem present, so that was disappointing. Obviously, a lot of people lost a ton of money on Kevin Durant's injury last night in cash games, going back home to the Wizards because he's from Washington, and also the first time he's played Scott Brooks. A lot of narrative going into that. Looks like Durant's going to be out for about a couple of months, so it's not looking good for that team, though they still have plenty of talented players. I'm going to start today off with Hassan Whiteside, 15-3 on FantasyDraft, 8,800 FanDuel, 8,300 on DraftKings, and right now I think it looks like Willie Reed is probable to miss this game again. Whiteside put up 37 and 38 minutes, I believe, in the last 2 games without Willie Reed. This is against a Sixers team that he's already had a 60-plus point outing against this year. I believe this is the cheapest he's been since he's gone up against them. He hasn't been ultra consistent, but what are they going to do to stop him? Jahlil Okafor can be a foul machine. I can see Whiteside and Waiters, Dragic, Tyler Johnson, all those guys that like to drive to the rim, I can see them all giving him a great deal of problems, which means we should see Richaun Holmes earlier than later. I think this is a game where Hassan Whiteside should eat, and he should eat big. I'm expecting about a 50-point output for him tonight. Moving on from there, one of my favorite games to target is going to be the Houston Clippers game because Houston doesn't play defense. The Clippers try to play defense, but the reality is the Houston offense is just too good to really play defense against, if that makes any sense. There's not that many teams that are going to be shutting that machine down. Chris Paul at 16-4 on FantasyDraft, 9,700 on FanDuel, and 8,900 on DraftKings. To me, I just see too much upside there. I get that Patrick Beverley is a great defender, but this is Chris Paul we're talking about, and I can definitely see Paul exceeding the 50-point mark on this slate. This is one of those situations where I don't care about defense versus position when we're talking about guys like Chris Paul and LeBron James and Kevin Durant. And just to kind of talk about something I want to talk about tomorrow on the full-length podcast is this is what keeps a guy like Jimmy Butler out of that really elite conversation, is because LeBron plays with killer instinct all the time. Durant plays with killer instinct all the time. Even guys like Anthony Davis at this point in their career are. Jimmy Butler's not there. He was complacent. He was passing on shots that he had no business passing on. Yeah, and I just don't think he's got to correct those things. He's got to be fully aggressive, and he has to put the pedal to the metal 100% of the times. Rant over the last pick, or should I say picks, because this is a specific situation that I really like, and I don't think these guys are going to be matched up all that often, but I could be wrong. But I love building a lot of my lineups tonight around Brook Lopez and Willie Cauley-Stein. Lopez is 12-3 on fantasy draft, which is just a joke. 7,300 on FanDuel, 6,500 on DraftKings, again, just a joke. Willie Cauley-Stein is 10-9 on fantasy draft, 5,400 on FanDuel, 5,500 on DraftKings. Again, all of those prices for Willie Cauley-Stein are not where they should be. He should be at this point, 12,000 on fantasy draft and probably 6K on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Centers have been killing the Kings. I mean, I can't remember who it was the first game. I really should have come more prepared with that, but just take my word that it happened. Frank Kaminsky put up a huge game against them, and then Karl Anthony Towns dominated them with a 56 to 62 point outing, depending on the fantasy sites you're playing. Brook Lopez is definitely right in between those two talents. So if Kaminsky put up 43 to 47 fantasy points and Cat put up 56 to 62, I don't see why Brook cannot put up at least a 40-point game. And at that point, at his price on all those sites, I mean, he's just crushing value. And this is a guy who his box scores always read really weird because Kenny Atkinson is the devil of coaching. He insists on making sure that every guy who's on his bench plays like at least 10 minutes. There's no stability to what he does. He's what Sean Payton used to be in the NFL to fantasy players. He's just poison. You never know who's his favorite. But Lopez has the most carved out role on this team out of anybody. I think he should see 32 to 35 minutes in this game. I'm expecting a 50 burger. I'm just going to put it out there. I know that's really trying to say something, and that's probably forcing the issue. But this Kings team is going to continue to get hit hard by centers because Costa Koufis isn't a good defender. Willie Cauley-Stein just doesn't have the mass to stop anyone. I love Scalabassier and his upside, but he's not there yet. There's no way he's there yet. So Lopez should eat. And on the flip side of things, we've seen what everybody's done to Brooklyn. They're the worst team in the league, but they're the best team in the league to target against. Their last three, I think they're playing at like 108 pace. That's nuts for a team like Sacramento that was playing around like 96 possessions a game that's jumped to 98 and a half since Cousins left. And that's a huge increase in potential possession. So Willie Cauley-Stein, as far as I'm concerned, I'm putting his floor in this game at 30, and his ceiling is probably near the 40-point mark as well. I expect Stein's ownership maybe to lead all ownerships on the day, just depending on what value plays come out in the next 7 hours or so. Now for our value plays of the night, my favorite value play is Terrence Ross. I mean, I don't get it. There's just no respect for him whatsoever. He's seen an average of like 33 minutes since coming over from Toronto. He's in the starting five. I think this is a great situation to run him out. He's really cheap across the industry. He is 10-2 on fantasy draft, 4,400 on FanDuel, 5,200 on DraftKings. Those prices are just too low for someone that we just saw put up an almost 40 or at 40-point game, and he's playing New York, and we know all about the Knicks. The Knicks are not playing defense at all. They're likely to be short Wiley, Hernan-Gomez. It does look like Kristaps Porzingis will be back, but it's really irrelevant. It's not like one of those guys is playing better defense than the other. I mean, this team is going to give Ross plenty of time to shoot. There's not perimeter protection. He could sit and just drop 3-point shots all day, and that wouldn't surprise me if that's what ends up happening. So he's my top value play of the day. Moving on from there, it's Spencer Dinwiddie, and I know a lot of people are probably thinking to themselves, like, why are you suggesting Spencer Dinwiddie? I mean, you've done some crazy things already in the few days that you've been moving on to these podcasts, videocasts, whatever you want to call them. But if you look at his track record since Jeremy Lin has come back, all of a sudden someone's decided they need to play basketball, and it makes sense because he's in danger of losing a ton of his minutes. I don't think they're going to ramp Lin up to maybe anything more than 18 to 20 minutes. I expect Dinwiddie to still be able to rack up minutes. He's priced at $7,400 on FantasyDraft, $4,300 on FanDuel, $3,800 on DraftKings, and I have to attribute that probably to low ownership because the production over the last 3 to 4 games dictates that he should be a 5K player, or a, let's say at least 9,000 player on FantasyDraft, 5K on both FanDuel and DraftKings. I'm just guessing the ownership's really low, and I believe that is part of the algorithm that they use to derive pricing. So he's risky. There's no question about it. There's no guarantee that the minutes are going to be there. And I already mentioned one time that Kenny Atkinson is the devil of fantasy basketball. So you're taking a risk there. But for the price, if he has another 30-point game, and he just had a game in the 40s a couple of nights ago, if he gets one of those games in the 30s, you're going to get him at very low ownership. But more importantly than that, you're going to get him at a very, very low cost. And he really allows you to open up your lineup. Lastly, let's talk Kyle O'Quinn. I just mentioned that it's unlikely that Wiley Hernangomez is going to play tonight. And even though Kristaps Porzingis is back and he's going to take some of those minutes at the center position away, Kyle O'Quinn at 10-2 on FantasyDraft, 4,700 on FanDuel, 5,200 on DraftKings is just an awesome play. This guy is a point-per-minute monster. I have him at about 25 minutes tonight, and our projection algorithm says that that's 30 to 32 fantasy points, depending on the scoring system of the site. That's not accounting for things like double-double if he's able to grab 10 boards to go along with 10 points. I think he's an excellent play. The only downside is that the last time he was really given this starting opportunity, I mean, it was just a bust, an absolute bust. And it was a good matchup, and I can't remember who it was against, but he was extremely highly owned, and New York just got rolled within the first 6 minutes, and that was it. He played probably like 10 more minutes the rest of the game. So there's some reason to be concerned, but let's face it, I mean, we just watched Jimmy Butler put up 23 fantasy points in about as good of a matchup as you can get. I'm not buying the hype that Wilson Chandler's a lockdown defender. Butler's head wasn't in it. This team wasn't in it. We've seen Isaiah Thomas come through with 35 fantasy point outings. So everybody's going to have off nights. There's no way that you can predict that. That's the human element to the game. This might be 80% skill, but it is 20% luck. You can't account for Kevin Durant getting his knee busted out a minute into the game. So just you have to be aware of that. And, when I analyze the matchups, I'm just analyzing it from a statistical basis. I'm not looking at, Quinn might have an off night, so I'm staying away. That's just way too much variance for me. I'm sticking strictly to what I see in the statistics. With that said, do us a favor, hit the subscribe button in this YouTube video. Go to our website, researchfantasy.com. We have a lot of stuff that we're adding in terms of content, articles, picks, projections, different little widgets, and we're working on some development as well to really bring something unique to the daily fantasy and season-long fantasy space. Sign up for our mailing list where we hit you with our exclusive picks, advice, and things of that nature. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Research and Win, and join us again for tomorrow. And if you have any questions, by all means, hit us up on Twitter. You can hit me up on Twitter. I'm at Nickfromcwe. I check usually like once a day. Post a comment in the comment section on YouTube. I check that all day, and we'll catch you again tomorrow. Good luck.